Tonight on Up Close, the death penalty. A notorious San Antonio murder case, an execution carried out before our eyes, and the debate over capital punishment in Texas. This is Up Close. The death penalty has always been a controversial issue. Texas executes more inmates than any other state in the country by far. In this episode of Up Close, we go to Huntsville to witness one of those executions firsthand. But before our trip, we tell you the story of the crime that led there, the murder of an innocent woman.
She was beautiful. She was just so good. She's a very, very good person.
I asked my oldest daughter, "Do you miss Theresa?" She said, every minute. It never goes away. It's 25 years ago. You know.
Mark, the younger brother, was asked by Rolando, "Do I do it?" He says yes. And he just goes over and shoots her in the head.
Hi, Mr. Sanchez. Easy Romero. Nice to meet you. This is my photographer, Eddie.
It was such a shock. You know, you have her one day and the next day she's gone. We were actually watching TV when the phone rang, and it was Michael's mother. And she said, "You need to go to Theresa's house because there's something happened." I figured, well, maybe you burn the house down or something, you know. And when we got there, I saw that yellow thing around and it's still, it can't be, maybe they had a party or something, you know. And I heard one of the policemen say, "Here comes her father."
I was assigned the capital murder of Theresa Rodriguez. You know, at the time I looked at the case, I read the details, I looked at the name Mike Rodriguez, Theresa Rodriguez. It really didn't ring a bell at the time, but I was eager to get out to the scene, crime scene. I wanted to look at the actual crime scene. I wanted to speak to a witness, and so the only witnesses that I knew of at the time were Mike Rodriguez and his brother. So he arrived, and needless to say, I was completely surprised because I actually went to high school with this guy. So, you know, not that we were friends per se, but we knew the same people. We would go to the same parties, so we knew each other. You know, I offered my condolences, and I assured him that we're going to do everything that we can to get the person responsible for this murder. But I asked him, "Can you tell me what happened?" And so the way he explained the story was they had just arrived home from the movies. He was driving, his brother was sitting behind him, and his wife was in the passenger seat. So, and as they parked the vehicle in the garage, he was exiting the vehicle, and some unknown guy, some unknown actor came up to the passenger side, opened the door, shot his wife, and took her watch. By that time, Mike had already exited his vehicle, okay, and the brother had exited the vehicle, and the actor ran by both of them on his way out. Needless to say, already I'm starting to think, something's not right here. And as I'm talking to him, I realize he's got a very nice gold Rolex watch. And I compliment him on his watch, as that's a very nice watch. And they came here to take her watch. Okay, as you know, you wear that watch all the time? You know, so we just had a very brief conversation about the watch. So I took that little bit of information back to the office, had some conversations with other detectives about the events, and needless to say, we all were a little suspicious of the story. What's important to know is what Rolando says. He said that Mike Rodriguez's brother, Mark Rodriguez, met with an intermediary because he wanted to know if this intermediary knew of someone who'd be willing to commit a murder. This intermediary put Mark and Mike in touch with Rolando. Rolando was willing to commit this murder for $2,000. They drove, they parked. Rolando went to the passenger door, opened the door. He tells me vividly that he remembers seeing her look at him. She looked at him, and then he shot and killed her and left.
Cold-blooded.
Cold-blooded murder. Cold-blooded murder.
After the funeral, you know, we buried her, and that Saturday they called me in the police department, and I went, and they took me into 3 or 4 rooms, and when I got to the end, all of the detectives were there, and the lead detective was there, and he asked me, he said, "You want some water?" And I said, "No." He said, "I'm afraid we have bad news." I said, "What can be worse than this?" He said, your son-in-law did it. He's in custody." So that, you know, that really hurt. I came home and told the girls, and they started crying, you know, that it was him. "Are you sure that they've got him?"
A lot of people said, he did it. And we were not thinking about him, we were thinking about her. You know, we'll never see her again, you know. To me, I wondered if it hurt when it happened, you know, I wonder how long she was, you know, alive. And we never went that way. And a lot of media came over, and we wouldn't give an interview because I couldn't believe that he would do something like that. I said, no, it wasn't him.
I've wondered, which one of these people is worse? The husband who would have someone kill his wife for the insurance money, or the person who would kill someone who doesn't even know for a couple $1,000s. They're both equally horrible people. But the shooter's the more dangerous one. He doesn't even know this person, and he's for a couple $1,000, he's gonna go kill somebody he doesn't even know.
What is some of the evidence that you had against Rolando Ruiz?
Well, my recollection is we had the murder weapon. I think that there's a picture right here. The detective being shown the murder weapon by my partner, Robert McClure. We had the statements of his own confessions, and he named the other people. So there was a lot of evidence.
How do you think you'll feel when he's gone?
I wouldn't feel any better. It's not closure by a long shot. You know, people say, well, you know, that's closure. No, it's not. You still think about Theresa. If I'm by myself, I'm thinking about her. If I'm cutting the grass, I think about her. It's just that way.
While in prison for Theresa's murder, Michael Rodriguez escaped with 6 other inmates, a group notoriously known as the Texas 7. They went on a month-long crime spree that included the killing of Irving police officer Aubrey Hawkins on Christmas Eve 2000. He was executed for the crime in 2008. Michael's brother Mark was paroled in 2011, but was arrested 5 years later for his part in an alleged roofing scam. He's accused of stealing almost $100,000 from his victims. Rolando Ruiz was sent to death row following his conviction in 1995. He declined our request for an interview, but his family sent us a letter he wrote to them in prison that expressed remorse for the crime. Coming up, we take you to Huntsville for an up-close look at his final days and execution.
But they didn't release their connection. And the execution of Rolando Ruiz, who was the hitman in the murder of a San Antonio woman, moving another step closer to becoming reality. The Fifth Circuit Court has denied Ruiz a stay of execution. His case now goes to the Supreme Court. We'll be reporting live from Huntsville this afternoon, beginning at 5.
I have never witnessed an execution. It's not something reporters are eager to do, but it's a part of the job.
Do you know if she's headed to Huntsville?
It is always possible
Okay. Do you know
with any execution that a stay will be granted at the last minute. Attorneys will work to the last second to try and make that happen. Rolando Ruiz was granted 2 stays in the past, one in 2007 and one in 2016. And so leading into the day, it's hard to say whether or not he's going to get a third one. You just have to wait and see. So we're here in Huntsville, and it really is a beautiful community, population just under 40,000. And you know, one of the things that strikes you as you explore and get to know the city is how the prison is kind of located in the epicenter of the city. There are a lot of businesses, a lot of homes located literally just feet away from the prison gates. It really is an interesting and unique aspect to this place. I wasn't quite expecting that. You can walk around Huntsville and talk to the people there, and folks don't even know an execution is happening that day. I think that the prison is such a part of the culture there that it's not really even thought about. Now, the prison itself was nicknamed the Walls Unit because of the huge red brick walls that surround the facility. It is the oldest prison in Texas, and sometimes things that are very old can also look very ominous, and that is certainly the case with this place. It was creepy. I'm not gonna lie. The Walls Unit no longer houses death row, but it is still where the death chamber is located. In fact, they call it the death house, so it's not a real inviting place.
We're coming straight out of a package at 5, but at 6.
Another crew came with us to cover the story that day, but they handled all the live coverage from outside. Now, the state of Texas only allows 5 members of the media to witness an execution. I just so happened to be one of the ones that was allowed in. Why is it important that media witness these types of events?
You know, certainly want to be as transparent as possible because the state is carrying out an execution. And so we want media to be present and independent away from the state that has the ability to witness the execution, and they're witnessing it on behalf of the public.
Now, there are a few rules that they gave us. I'll go ahead and read them to you. Conservative dress is encouraged for all visitors. Sleeveless shirts and dresses are allowed but must cover the shoulders. It is also preferred that reporters and their crew members not wear white. Nothing may be given to or taken from an offender by the media. Kind of walk us through the next 2 hours. What's going to happen before this execution actually takes place?
So Ruiz right now is in a holding cell just outside the execution chamber. He is meeting with the chaplain that's back there. And then from that point on, he'll remain in that execution holding area until we hear something from the courts.
The average length of time on death row is 10 years. Ruiz spent over 22 years on death row. So his attorneys were arguing that because his time was so lengthy, that amounted to cruel and unusual punishment, and the Supreme Court should hear his case. So when we arrived, things were still very much in limbo. By state law, all executions have to happen at 6 p.m. or later. So at about 5:15, we all got the call to head on inside and get ready.
Everything at this point is on hold here. The last word I had from the Supreme Court, from contacts I had no words up or down on his request for a stay. So right now, everything is on hold until we hear from the Supreme Court.
It was a long wait, about 5 hours. With each execution, the death warrant expires at midnight. So there we were at 8, 9, 10 p.m., and we still hadn't heard from the Supreme Court on what was going to happen. Then all of a sudden, I just heard, it's time.
The execution, as we understand it, is just about to begin. Moments ago, the witnesses were escorted from the administrative building here in Huntsville to the Walls unit where the death chamber is. Among them, of course, is Isis Romero.
They took us inside a waiting area and then outside through this walkway and into a very small room. And immediately you just saw him. He was there right through the glass, already on the gurney. And there was a microphone hanging from the ceiling, and you could just hear him breathing just heavily. It sounded like a scared, nervous breathing. Then the door shut behind me, and I heard the warden ask, "Do you have any last words?" It took 29 minutes for him to die. For 29 minutes, we all just stood there in the death chamber, just silent, just watching. People have asked me what it was like to watch someone die, to watch this execution. There are no words for it. It was just surreal. I keep thinking at the end of the day, Rolando Ruiz was still loved by someone. He was still someone's son and family member and friend, and that family, and they are hurting. But at the same time, he did this really awful thing. He took someone's life, a very precious life, and by law, he is now getting his punishment for that. In the end, telling this story, this whole story, from the murder that happened to the execution, it has made me think a lot about life, just life. How precious it is and how it can be taken away. Yes, this is a story about tragedy and death, but it is also a story about life. The lives of those who are no longer here and the lives of those left behind or connected to them in some way. It was a very important story to tell. There are people on both sides of the death penalty issue.
I firmly believe that the state doesn't have the right to take the lives of its own citizens. At the end of the day, I also think that the way the death penalty is administered is extremely arbitrary and unfair.
Every legislative session since 2003, a bill has been presented to Texas lawmakers to try and have the death penalty abolished. 2017 was no different.
quorum is present. We have a lot to hear. There's a lot of bills that have significant interest.
And every session, that bill fails. Even though the number of death sentences is declining across the state, public support of the death penalty is still there. A 2015 study by the University of Texas at Austin and the Texas Tribune showed that the vast majority of Texans, 75%, support the death penalty.
I think we should have the death penalty because why have overcrowded prisons and stuff? We could just get rid of the ones who are going to be there for life anyways, right away.
So if you kill somebody, I think your life should be taken as well.
If you're a serial anything, I think that you should get the death penalty.
Executions in Texas have changed dramatically over the years. Beginning in 1819, inmates were executed by hanging. Then came the electric chair in 1923, which was used for over 40 years.
The Supreme Court declared the death penalty unconstitutional today.
But in 1972, in a case called Furman versus Georgia, the Supreme Court ruled that the way capital punishment was being applied was unconstitutional, and all executions stopped across the country for about a decade.
But as it stands now, the death penalty is illegal in the United States. The 4 judges who voted today to uphold
Then finally came lethal injection. It was adopted in 1977, but it wasn't put into practice until 1982, and it's been that way ever since. The future of the death penalty may actually not depend on the law at all. In the past several years, we've heard a lot about shortages in some of the drugs being used in executions. Different states have different protocols. Some states use 3 drugs, some states use 2. Here in Texas, it's only 1. Texas used to use 3, but due to some of those shortages through the years, it was changed to just a single lethal dose of pentobarbital. The state has enough of this drug to carry out all currently scheduled executions, but we don't know what that looks like in the next few years as this drug is becoming increasingly difficult to obtain. So while the debate surrounding the death penalty may last into the foreseeable future, there's no guarantee the execution drugs will too.
What do I have to do? I'll do anything.
He told me just go make a date. He said just go stand on Guadalupe, you'll learn. Because of the money I was making, I got really strung out.
My drug habit was unreal. Even the drug dealers would be like, how are you even consuming this much?
Up Close continues next.